controversy continues, not only at home as regards setting up this inquiry, but also what's going on in Rio. A press conference yesterday by the police, and there's a quote on the front of the Irish Independent today: "You can use them all." Hickey's ticket deal with tout, inverted commas, firm boss. And a sub-headline to that is the Rio emails. The story is written by Cathal McMahon from the Irish Independent and independent.ie. Is on the line. Cathal, good morning.
Good morning, Declan.
Good morning. What happened yesterday then?
Yeah, so yesterday we had another twist and turns in this ongoing story. Well, yesterday afternoon we were called to a press conference in the Ciudad de Policia in the north of Rio. And here we were told that three OCI officials, Dermot Meehan, Stephen Martin and Kevin Kilty, were to meet with police and get a hearing. Mr. Heenan was the only one to arrive, and then about an hour later we were briefed by the police. They went on to go into a lot of detail, some detail, about the alleged ticket touting scandal ring that they're speaking about. They're saying that Marcus Evans and Patrick Hickey, who was the former president of the Irish Olympic Council of Ireland, were in regular email contact since 2010. And they showed us some examples of these emails between the two. They said that the email contact took place right up to and after the Olympic Games took place. And in one of the emails they showed, they displayed how they showed how Mr. Hickey offered tickets. It would appear to have allegedly offered tickets to Mr. Evans.
So this is circumstantial in a way, is it? As regards payment for the tickets, rather than a gift of the tickets. Would that be right, or were the police asked about that?
So what the emails say is the one from August 3rd, which I suppose people are quoting today, it's allegedly from Pat Hickey to Marcus Evans, where he says, "I can confirm to you I do not require any of the opening or closing ceremony tickets. That was part of our NOC allocation. You can use them all." So NOC being National Olympic Committee, in this case being the OCI. Now, Mr. Evans said, "That sounds, hi Pat, I'm glad to hear all coming together. I'm afraid I've more than I need as well. So all we can do is put them back up in the portal. We're hopeful resell."
Oh, right, okay. Fair enough.
So,
yeah, it might...
You can draw your own conclusions from that based on your original question.
Okay, and of course we haven't heard from Mr. Hickey or any of his representatives as regards an explanation for that, but that's what the police are saying. The implication of actually dealing with this particular company, it should have been Pro 10, shouldn't it, rather than the ticket sellers from 2012?
Yeah. So basically, this is the nub of the argument here. THG were the official ticket resellers for the Olympic Council of Ireland for the 2012 Olympics in London and the 2014 Olympics, Winter Olympics in Sochi. They applied, and the OCI applied for THG to be the authorised ticket resellers for the Rio Olympics, but this was refused by the Olympics authorities in Rio. As a result of this, the license was granted to Pro 10. They were a recently formed company, and it's the police allegation that Pro 10 was created to act as a bridge between the OCI and THG. So, i.e., that they claim it was a zombie company, one that was just purely created to facilitate this agreement between the OCI and alleged agreement between the OCI and THG.
The tickets that the quote is "you can use them all," where that allocation of tickets, where should that have been going?
So each Olympic committee gets an allocation of tickets. Now they've got two decisions. They can decide to allocate them themselves, or they give them out themselves, or in the case of Ireland and a lot of countries, they appoint a third party to do this. I suppose to be seen to be fair, to be seen to take maybe the role from them, they don't want to. It can be quite a complicated and difficult process. So these tickets would have been set aside for the for Irish nationals, essentially, for people who want to go to the Olympics who would have the option within Ireland to buy them from our national organisation via Pro 10. Now, what we know is that a lot of these tickets actually ended up, or allegedly ended up, in the hands of a man called Kevin Mallon. He was the start of this, really, and he was arrested on the day of the opening ceremony at a hotel in Rio. When they searched his hotel room, they found around over 820 tickets. Now, these are good tickets. They were premium tickets for the football final, for the opening ceremony, the closing ceremony, and other major events, the events that would have been priority for people to buy. He claimed, Mr. Mallon is a director for THG. Now, what THG claim and Pro 10 claim is that he was merely acting as an individual there just to handing out tickets, that he's acting in a voluntary capacity because Pro 10 didn't have anyone on the ground. They asked Kevin Mallon to hand out tickets on their behalf to customers of Pro 10.
But in parallel is the email between Mr. Hickey and Mr. Evans.
It would appear to be somewhat parallel to what the claims have been of so far.
Yes, that's pretty damning, isn't it? On the face of it, without us making judgment, I'm sure the judges make judgment. We haven't heard from Mr. Hickey, but from an outsider, I suppose let's leave that in the air. I suppose, but
I'm conscious that this is a case of it's mired in legal quagmire, so it could be.
It could be an innocent explanation for it. And
absolutely, and we haven't heard specifics from Mr. Hickey's counsel on these emails yet, so we'll wait to be seeing what they have to say.
Yeah, and of course, as you say, we haven't heard from Mr. Hickey, and there might be, because these people knew each other, it might be a personal relationship between them that doesn't involve any wrongdoing. But as you say, we'll wait and see. The three people that the Brazilian police had an interest in, what's happened to them?
Oh, so these are the OCI officials that they've had an interest in?
Yeah.
Okay, so Mr. Heenan, as you said, he arrived at the police station yesterday. Spoke to police, would leave. He was in there for over an hour anyway, probably over an hour and a half. He left the police station, and in the press conference, the delegado, Ricardo Barbosa de Sousa, he said that Mr. Heenan had no more questions to answer, that he would be free to go once his passport was returned by a judge. He says that basically Mr. Heenan's role was purely bureaucratic. He did not have any decision-making powers in terms of where the tickets were allocated to and who was appointed as the authorised ticket reseller. Now, the two other men have sought legal advice. They are due to appear at the police station on Thursday, where they will again have a similar hearing. Now, what we learned during the press conference yesterday was that police searched all these men's rooms, and they allege that in a safe in a room in Mr. Kilty's room, they found 228 tickets. The police claim that these tickets, that Mr. Kilty told them that these tickets were for athletes. Now, the police say they want to investigate this further and have say they have further questions about this.
And when will we know? There's one person that's probably going to return pretty early, and the other have to go through process with the police. When will we know when all that is sorted? Because we hear of delays with a lot of police investigations and indeed the courts because of the break that was there. Yeah,
so this is yesterday we were all down the courts. We were running around up and down the multiple floors trying to find a hearing for Pat Hickey. We eventually, after going through about 8 or 9 different offices, we arrived at the office for the distribution of court cases, and we were told that Mr. Hickey's case is one of about 800. The courts closed for the duration of the Olympics, so there's a massive backlog dating back to August 5th. Now, what the manager there told us was that Mr. Hickey will not get any preferential treatment. He will not be fast-tracked through the line. He will have to wait his turn like everyone else. Now, she anticipated that it will be Friday at the earliest before Mr. Hickey could potentially have a court hearing.
All right. And one final question then. The interest that they have in FAI Chief John Delaney, do we know what that is?
They did speak briefly about John Delaney after the press conference.
And they would just like to interview, and that's...
They would like to interview him and speak to him about this case.
And that's all that we know about at the moment.
That's all that I suppose I'm able to say at this point.
Very good. Okay. Thanks for your time, Cathal. Good morning to you.
No worries, either.
It's interesting how this is developing. Thank you very much. That's Cathal McMahon there, who's in Rio de Janeiro there for the Irish Independent and independent.ie. And of course, we haven't heard any side to counteract any of the allegations made by the Brazilian police. So it remains to be seen whether evidence that we think, inverted commas, looks pretty bad for that side of the argument. Of course, there could be a totally innocent explanation for it as regards what happened to the tickets and the interactions there. But as I say, we haven't heard as yet if there is a case to answer, and indeed what Mr. Hickey and his people have to say about it. So we're still in the dark about it as the police have these revelations slowly between emails and things like laptops and mobile phones.